Alright, this is a FoodSaver Model V2830. Sometimes these things stop sealing because the pump loses its draw. You pull food particles through there and they can mess up the seal, or the seal can dry out. To open this up, pop these little rubber feet off, just grab the tab and flip it over. I've already loosened up the screws. There's 4 of them. And you can just lift this straight up and set it to the side. You can leave the screws right in the holes. Here's your pump. I took the 4 screws out of the top of it. When you remove the screws, make sure you support underneath it. You don't want to put a lot of force down on this thing and mess up that motor. Alright, once you get those 4 screws out, it should lift up real easy and turn out of the way. And you can see in here food particles in this line. Those were pulled up in here into the pump. And if you look inside here, you can even see food particles that have been splattered around there as the pump threw them out. And if you look in that little hole, that's the diaphragm that stops the air from backing up. And that can get dirty. Look at all the crud that I've built up in there. And that needs to be cleaned. To get that out, there's 2 screws holding in the motor, here and here. Okay, once you have those screws loosened up all the way, you can grab a hold of the pump here and lift it right up. Okay, I took the motor out, flipped it upside down. Look at all the crud that's in there. What I want to do, 2 screws that I need to take out. You can see the screws on either side of the motor head, here and over here. I'm going to go ahead and pull those off. Okay, with those screws loose, it gives that gear just enough freedom to allow this plastic piece to pull off. I'm just going to push in on the center here while I use my thumb to pull outward. Actually, I'm balancing it also with this finger. And it should slide off there. Don't force it too hard. Okay. And we can see all the buildup of crud on this. Wow. Alright, well, I'm going to clean this up and put it back in there. You also want to clean out the hole. Maybe, if you're neat it, clean up all the stuff in here, which I probably will. Also note that this very important piece here allows air to go one way but not another. Got to make sure that you don't change the direction that that is facing when you put it back together, because when you flip it over it will fall out. Alright, additionally I wanted to point out that I should clean the bottom of this as well, because there could be little food particles on there and they will stop that seal. That also means you need to clean this here and the rubber gasket that goes along with it. Clean that both sides of any food particles, and we'll re-grease it. Now if you see a lot of food, a lot of particles in here, this hose might get plugged, especially if that stuff dries on and it hardens. So in the worst case, you might have to pull this off and be very careful, but if you spin it back and forth like this as you pull on it, pulling in between these two, that should come off, and then they use a Q-tip or something to get in there to clean it. It's also useful to use a Q-tip to clean inside that pit. Get around all the edges and stuff, any food materials. Alright, I'm going to re-grease these. Now I found some 100% silicone grease. I'm going to use that. I'm going to put a little bit on this. And I'm going to rub it across both sides. That'll stop it from drying out. You don't want too much on this piece. Now, I shouldn't have to put any on this, but I'll just run my finger over the top, get any of that excess off. Okay, this one you want to run around this rim and some across the front here. Okay, I just got a little bead of it on my finger here. I'm spinning it, allowing it to spread pretty well evenly across this here. Can't really put, well, you could put too much on it, but it'd be hard to do as it moves back and forth. Get a little bit more. As it moves back and forth, it will move any excess out of the way. Okay, that's pretty good. I want to run my finger around the edge in here. It's probably not necessary, but it certainly doesn't hurt. And I'm going to put this piece back on. Okay, again, be careful, don't force this too much, because you don't want to break it. Alright? Just want to line those holes up and then kind of squeeze it and it just pops right in there. And we should be back in business. Okay, now that it's back together, let's tighten up those screws. Make sure they're on there nice and firm, but don't strip them. Alright, I'm about to put the motor back in. And I wanted to point out this piece of plastic that's sticking up here prevents the motor from sliding in this direction. So we have to make sure that this lip will go on that side of that piece of plastic there. Just hook the motor underneath those wires so we don't catch them. Make sure that these wires stay on top. There. Okay. Now, I'm going to put this back in. Okay, I've set all three pieces here so you can see the reassembly of this. Notice the seal here. I have the big opening facing this way, alright? And the reason I did that, the easiest way to put this in, pick it up, flip that upside down, and drop it in place on here. Make sure that's centered. Okay. Or the grease that you use should hold it in place if you don't get your fingers in the way. If it doesn't, if you have problems with that, you might have to do it with the motor out. Okay, you want to hold this down as you put the screws in. Simply put the screws back in. Make sure you don't strip anything out. And you should be good to go. Make sure you, before you put the cover back on it, you check all the hoses to make sure there's nothing that's been pulled off. See all the junctions here. This is what determines if enough pressure has been pulled out to do the seal. Make sure none of these lines are cracked or plugged or taken off and you forgot to put it back on. Alright, now we've plugged it back in. My favorite test to see if it can crush a can. That'll tell me if it's got enough suction. Alright, here we go. Okay, we have total success. Sealing. And done. Alright, thanks for watching, guys.